Well, happy holidays, everyone, and Merry Christmas. It is Christmas Day, and I wanted to talk about something fun on this holiday. Last year around Christmas, I released my review of all three Black Christmas films, and I always have fun watching holiday horror movies, as most of you out there can tell by the way my channel is structured and the type of films that I review. And there's something about holiday horror films that I really enjoy. And so this year I decided to visit the entirety of the Silent Night, Deadly Night film franchise. And why did I do this? Well, it's a holiday horror slasher franchise that exists that I'd never seen before. And I thought this one would be a lot of fun to check out and watch. And so what I did is I watched every film, and that is the 5 original Silent Night, Deadly Night films and the remake that came out several years ago. And so I wanted to talk about them, rank them from my least favorite to my favorite, and I thought that would be a fun way to spread the Christmas cheer with all of you. So as I said, there are 6 films in this franchise, including the remake, and so I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my favorite. As I say in every single rank list video that I do, these are just my opinions. They may not be fact. You may not agree with them. You probably won't agree with them. And a lot of my rank lists, I notice there's a lot of people that don't agree completely, which is totally fine. It's just a fun way to kind of compare how you feel about this franchise to the way I feel about this franchise. So without further ado, let's get into it now. So coming in dead last place is Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, Better Watch Out. This is probably the only film in the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise that is almost unwatchable. There are a couple of moments in it that I really enjoyed. This movie follows this young character who she is blind and she lives with her brother, and she's at this like medical center getting these treatments done where you learn that she is like trying to be mentally connected with the killer from the Silent Night, Deadly Night films from the second one, but it's played by a different actor. He's got this goofy, like, clear brain helmet on that you can see through, which is pretty neat. What was really weird about this movie for me is David Lynch is my favorite director, and there are a lot of David Lynch regulars in this movie, and with how much of it is about dreams and the connectivity of dreams, I was like, is this a person trying to make the third film in this holiday horror franchise related to David Lynch in one way or another? And it just falls flat on its face. I really enjoyed the intro and like the idea of the premise behind this, but the kills are relatively forgettable. The movie takes its sweet ass time to get where it wants to go, and by the time the third act action starts to kind of happen, it's just so bland and bloated. The characters are uninteresting, especially like making the lead protagonist this blind, really interesting character who's going about these studies. I was like, oh, I'm really invested. I'll be really interested in where this goes, and it pretty much just falls flat. It gets really repetitive. There just really isn't much going for this one. And if I was going to revisit this franchise, this is one that I would not revisit, period. It's just not worth it. It's just so bloated and boring, and I would just skip over it if you've never watched this franchise. Coming in at number 5, and this might be a controversial take, but Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. I really quickly want to say that I gotta shout out Eric Freeman for his incredible performance in this. He is over the top, he is absurd, he is an absolute blast to watch. He plays the younger brother Ricky from the first film, who is the younger brother of the killer from the original Silent Night, Deadly Night film. And I really appreciate the entire second portion of this film. It's fun, it's campy, it's stupid. It's really hard to classify this as a Christmas movie. It doesn't really feel like a Christmas movie. You don't really get that holiday atmosphere whatsoever. But Eric Freeman's performance is so ridiculous and bad and over the top that it's hard not to love that. The problem with this movie is the first 45 minutes is an exact recap of the first movie, and I had never seen this franchise before. If I'm going to watch a movie franchise from the first film to the end, I don't want a 45-minute recap of the movie that I have already watched before that one. And it doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like 30 minutes of new material attached to just copy and pasting the original material with some changes in the casting at points, where it was like they reshot scenes from the first film. I don't really understand why. But it's like, it was so difficult. He's in a psychiatric institute at the beginning of the film, and he's just recollecting exactly what happened in the first film with the doctor, and it just gets gets really boring to the point where it's like when it finally amps up and it's to the part of the movie that's different, where it's following him in his later teenage years, that's when it gets really interesting and fun. But it takes so long to get there that it's almost impossible to call this a movie. It feels like a 30-minute short attached to original material that already exists. And as much fun as I had with that second part, I had more fun with the new and original ideas that exist in the films that I'm going to talk about after this than I did even with Eric Freeman's ridiculous performance in the "It's Garbage Day" line, which I did think was really fun. And if I watch this again, which I probably will, I would just fast forward like 45 minutes into the movie to where I get new material. So coming in at number 4 is the 2012 remake Silent Night. Calling this a remake is pretty silly. It's pretty much, aside from the Santa Claus killer, it's a completely different film. The two have virtually nothing in common. There's a couple callbacks, including someone saying "garbage day" at one point in this, which was like a reference to the second film. But it's pretty much a generic slasher that takes place on Christmas. But what I like about this movie more than the two that I didn't like at all, it's super atmospheric. It really does a great job of building up that sense of the holiday, and the kills in this are actually really entertaining to watch. I really liked the mask that the Santa Claus was wearing. It made him really menacing and really disturbing, and I liked that a lot. I also liked the ambiguity of who his character was up until the end of the film, which was really nice. It just kept you guessing. There was a lot of red herrings thrown into who the killer could be, which I liked that part of the film. The problem that I have with this movie is the campy dialogue gets so stupid at moments. I feel like even an actor I love like Malcolm McDowell, who gives some corny lines in this that really made me laugh a lot and made me smile. There are some moments in this that are so incredibly stupid that I was just like, I really can't get behind this whatsoever as much as I want to. It's just so silly and dumb. It's really enjoyable for the most part. And like I said, I really like the over-the-top kills. There's some Christmas-affiliated kills in this one that are a lot of fun. And it is an enjoyable experience. It's a movie that I could see myself revisiting again. I just don't like it as much as some of the other films on this list. Coming in at number 3 is Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, The Toy Maker, starring Mickey Rooney. This movie is wild, and I say that in the best way possible. This tells the story of this mother and her son. Her husband passes away at the beginning of the film because her son gets a mysterious delivery on Christmas of this toy that goes nuts and kills the father. You're introduced to Mickey Rooney's character, who is the owner of a toy shop in town named Joe Petto, and his son's name is Pino, which obviously Geppetto and Pinocchio, which is a pretty funny thing. And the entire film is these toys coming to, well, not really coming to life, but these mechanical toys killing people. And it's incredibly enjoyable. It's silly. It's over the top. The third act sequence in this is like one of the most absurd things I've ever watched in a movie. I could not believe what they were doing in this. This is a movie that takes place around Christmas time. It doesn't really feel like a Christmas movie, but it is really enjoyable. It pretty much loses sight of what the first two films were doing. I feel like the first 3 films are all connected, and after that, they kind of just go off the rails and do whatever the hell they want, which is fine. Other than having like a person in a Santa Claus costume at some point during the movie, these really don't always have a lot to do with Christmas. But this movie's a lot of fun, and it's really enjoyable. I think it has some pacing issues. For being an hour and a half long, some of it still feels really bloated. Some of it's a little sillier. I love silly, stupid horror films, and this one has those moments, but there's some that it's just a little too silly and stupid for me to 100% get on board. But I still had a lot of fun. Mickey Rooney is really hamming it up to like the most extreme. The kid at the beginning, he does an okay job because he stops talking, so he doesn't really have to deliver any dialogue throughout the movie, which is fine. His facial expressions get pretty ridiculous throughout the movie, but I enjoyed this one a heck of a lot. It's one I could see myself revisiting around the holiday season, and it's a really good time. If you've never seen this one, I'd recommend checking it out. So my top 2 are probably interchangeable. I haven't sat with this franchise for long enough to really know which one I would pick first, but this is where they stand as of right now. So coming in at number 2 is Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 4, Initiation. The only thing I needed to know about this film before I went into it is Brian Yuzna's name attached to the directing on this. And I know Brian Yuzna produced the 5th one, and you can definitely see his hands all over it. But this movie has nothing to do with Christmas really at all. It has nothing to do with the original films. This is a story of this like investigative journalist who isn't being taken seriously at the newspaper that she works at, and she stumbles upon this mysterious death of this woman who falls off this building. And when she starts investigating, she finds out that she was a pawn of a cult that is this cult that has to deal with like bugs, and it just becomes a Brian Yuzna film. There are so many moments that reminded me of Society in this. Screaming Mad George did the visual effects in this one as well, which he did the visual effects for Society, which is one of my favorite horror films ever made. Disturbing, over the top. It's exactly Society in a Christmas affiliated horror movie. Even though this takes place in like LA, there's like no snow, it really doesn't feel like Christmas at all. It has Clint Howard giving one of the most absurd performances I've ever seen in a movie, period. It's so weird. Twists and turns that this movie takes, I feel like you would never be able to guess, even if you tried. It's just a lot of fun, and Brian Yuzna is someone who is uncompromisingly him in everything that he makes, and this movie has these weird bug-like creatures that are slimy and disturbing. There's body horror elements in this. There's everything I could possibly want in a horror movie in this movie. I just feel like the pacing isn't all that great, and obviously it's the 4th film in a franchise. It doesn't pace itself perfectly, but it is engaging and entertaining and weird enough for me to want to revisit again. And if you haven't seen this movie, watch it. It's absurd. You'll never believe what you're going to see in this movie. So coming in at number 1 is a surprise to probably no one, is the original Silent Night, Deadly Night film. And while I don't think that this is a perfect movie, it's a really entertaining movie. And the reason why I like it so much is despite it being an over-the-top 80s slasher movie set on Christmas that offended a ton of religious people, which I love. Anytime I see a movie like this, like Black Christmas or anything that was like, oh my god, a killer Santa Claus, or people getting murdered around Christmas time, and religious powerhouse groups got so upset that films like this existed that they protested them, I always get excited for that. I love hearing about it. But this movie is really interesting because it is a goofy slasher, but it also really has a lot of elements about overcoming trauma and a lot dealing with the Catholic Church and their treatment of people. It really has a lot of really poignant commentary interlaid through this just really silly, goofy slasher movie. And that's something I really appreciated, because the film is this young boy and his brother who are in a car at Christmas time where this renegade Santa Claus murders their parents right in front of them, and they end up getting dumped at this Catholic orphanage where the head nun at the Catholic orphanage treats them like shit and acts like they should just forget about their parents' death. They're overreacting to things. They shouldn't act that way. And it's just really ridiculous. The whole idea behind it is really ridiculous, that they would treat those kids that way when they've been through such a traumatic experience. And obviously it sends the one kid overboard to where he starts murdering people, and he yells, "Punish!" And it's hilarious every time it happens. So there's those silly, campy moments. The kills in this are really entertaining. They're a lot of fun. But I do like that there was that poignant commentary in the film, because it's always really cool to see a sillier film like this that's really just regarded as like a goofy, campy, fun slasher movie that can be taken seriously in a way that I feel like you can't always get that from every single horror movie. And I'm really glad I watched this franchise, and I'm glad I watched this film in particular, because I do think it's a really great slasher movie and one that you should visit if you haven't seen. So do you agree or disagree with my rankings of the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise? This isn't a franchise I'm attached to. I just watched it for the first time. I'll be really interesting to hear what you guys have to say about it. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm inching ever closer to 1,000 subscribers. I appreciate all the new people out there who have subscribed to my channel. It means the world to me. I really love doing this. It's so much fun to engage and interact with all of you out there. And I hope that you're all having a wonderful holiday season. As always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and Merry Christmas.